Even though he is retired, Colonel John B. Alexander still works today at Los Alamos National Laboratory in a capacity that is not clearly defined, as does NSA General Michael Aquino. Both personalities have extensive study in the application of non-lethal, extremely low-frequency weapons in attacking the populations and armed forces of enemy nations. Whether these terrible weapons that were supposed to have been turned against our implacable enemies have instead been turned against our very own people is difficult to prove, given the nature of the weapons involved. Thousands of American citizens have been publicly claiming for years that they are under attack from a directed energy weapon that attacks their physical bodies and their central nervous systems. Hundreds of websites have sprung up on the internet, and these distraught and tormented people have banded together in numerous groups seeking redress and relief from their elected representatives. They have brought legal cases to trial in both the United States and in international forums on human rights. Human rights activists have been besieged by them for help, but all such petitions and court cases have run up against the problem of lack of physical evidence. The entire judicial system is built on the concept of physical evidence, and people who are being attacked with invisible bullets are left with none. The very few instances of physical evidence within their grasp are easily countered by the government and can be suppressed or confiscated merely by going before a judge and repeating the most abused phrase in the English language: "This is a matter of national security." All physical evidence, paper trails, all crimes, foreign and domestic, are obscured in secrecy by hiding behind the system of classification and public lies. It must be remembered that the human radiation experiments began in 1943 and became public knowledge only when the government allowed it to be released to the public in 1995, and this was ostensibly to exonerate the guilty parties and to placate the victims. It is with this in mind that you should look at the extensive circumstantial evidence. The U.S. government has a long history of experimenting on human beings, not just the radiation studies, but many different programs of experimentation on unknowing and unwilling human beings. In every instance, these conspiracies were carried out more or less in public for decades without serious challenge. The Tuskegee syphilis study was one such well-known example of a terminal experiment on a large group of human test subjects. Hundreds of African-American men who had become infected with syphilis were allowed to die a slow and terrible death so that the pathology of the disease could be better understood. These men suffered horribly for decades, eventually going blind and then insane. The men also passed their illness on to countless other innocent people unnecessarily. The scientific results were written up and published in the most prestigious medical journals in the country by the most preeminent names in medicine. This state of affairs continued from the 1930s until the 1970s, before one single protest was lodged by a medical professional. In the end, this well-known crime of Tuskegee was also papered over, and no one was punished. MKUltra mind control experiments began at the end of World War II and became public in the 1970s, however imperfectly, and went black again because of Senate hearings, but these experiments have continued to this day. The only reason that MKUltra was ever brought into the light of day was that a dissident group stole government documents and released them to the press, which initially refused to publish them. The MKUltra archive was destroyed because of the seriousness of the crimes perpetrated by the intelligence community. If it had become public knowledge that the intelligence agencies had allowed Nazi war criminals to experiment on American citizens, including children, and then replicated these techniques themselves, the damage to their reputation could never be undone. The only aspects of CIA criminal activity in general, or MKUltra in particular, that the intelligence community ever admitted to were the ones that were already public, or details that had very little to do with the current capacities of mind control weapons and techniques. Microwave weapons and remote influence of the human central nervous system are the crown jewels of the intelligence community. It should be noted that documents dating from World War I, such as the formula for invisible ink, are still classified, and that no serious secrets have ever been or ever will be willingly divulged. What did become public was only the tip of the iceberg, because mind control techniques and related technology work well. Human beings can be made vulnerable to manipulation and can be used unknowingly in intelligence operation. The technology that has evolved is very powerful. In fact, it is the ultimate weapon, and the penalty for revealing these secrets is false imprisonment and assassination. For any new weapon system, it has always been necessary to test it to refine and perfect the weapon, whether chemical, biological, or nuclear, or in this case microwave and radio frequency radiation weapons. Human beings have been used to perfect nuclear, chemical, and biological weapons by both the United States and its enemies. These experiments have historically been carried out both in times of war and in times of peace. The only proof of human beings ever being used as experimental subjects in the development of microwave non-lethal weapons was from captured Japanese documents at the end of World War II. Their civilian scientists had used prisoners of war in the laboratory. The POWs were cooked to death through microwave heating in terminal experiments. To obscure the truth, the scientists referred to the test subjects as monkeys in their lab notebooks. The truth emerged only because Japan was a defeated power, and their biological, chemical, and microwave weapons programs were confiscated by the U.S. Navy. To illustrate how it is especially necessary to use human test subjects, we will examine one facet of the arsenal of these non-lethal weapons. Cyclotronic resonance refers to the ability to resonate or spin small particles with a given resonance frequency. Military doctrine for non-lethal weapons in this area is as follows. Initially, enemy armies or populations can be exposed to, sprayed with, a very small amount of chemical or biological agent. The quantity of chemical or biological agent used may be so small as to be virtually undetectable. Following exposure, the enemy population may be targeted with microwave or radio frequency radiation in the exact resonance frequency of the chemical or biological agent used. The toxic agent will begin to resonate or spin and will react with much greater speed or activity within the bodies of the target population, similar to the behavior of enzymes that make life possible. This greater reactivity may be millions of times greater than normal and would behave as if the person had been given a massive dose of chemical or biological agent, enough in fact to cause death. Cyclotronic resonance of chemical and biological agents allows entire armies or populations to be destroyed with only minute amounts of the agent in their bodies if they are attacked with non-lethal microwave weapons afterwards. It will be impossible to develop and deploy such a weapon without first testing it on human beings. These tests are actually being done on American citizens in their own homes. This is just one aspect of the non-lethal weapons testing that is being done on several thousand people across the United States. The case for proving that these crimes against humanity are happening to several thousand American citizens rests on the 7 facts put forth here. First, it is an historical fact that human beings have been used as experimental subjects by the United States government in the past, and that these crimes continued for decades without interruption or detection by the general public. Many of these various programs that used human beings as guinea pigs were carried on, as in the case of Tuskegee, virtually in the open. Besides the human radiation experiments on civilians and armed forces personnel, it is an historical fact that the government funded MKUltra mind control experiments for decades using Nazi war criminals and American scientists in an effort to perfect mind control as the ultimate weapon. Second, all new weapon systems must be tested in order that they be perfected, especially non-lethal microwave and radio frequency radiation weapons. This is the history of nuclear, chemical, and biological warfare, and all weapon systems that predate them. Third, the body of unclassified scientific research by American and Russian scientists exists, including patents, to such a sufficient detail to prove that these weapons do exist. The documented Russian directed energy weapons program included attacks on the U.S. Embassy that killed the U.S. ambassador, as well as a USSR program that targeted internal dissidents with anti-personnel microwave weapons, such that they might, quote, give their will over to some superior outside force. 4. There is a history of prior criminal behavior against progressive groups, criminal acts perpetrated by the U.S. intelligence agencies that date back to the 1950s and continue to this day. These criminal operations, exemplified by COINTELPRO, have adopted counterinsurgency warfare techniques that included assassination and forced suicide as a primary tactic against individual American citizens to stop mass movements from forming or to stop progressive groups from successfully advocating for social change in a lawful manner. 5. U.S. military doctrine is highly evolved on the subject of non-lethal weapons. These weapons have been fielded and used in warfare for decades, but their use has remained classified. The non-lethal weapon systems that the public is aware of are only those systems that are of the most benign in nature and will not create a public backlash. The use of the more sinister non-lethal weapons remains classified, though they are alluded to under such terms as soft kill in numerous papers by military professionals. The military doctrine papers that were covered in the first book, Monarch, the New Phoenix Program, will be touched on briefly here. These existing military doctrine is both voluminous and highly evolved, dating back to the 1970s. 6. Colonel John B. Alexander has implicated himself in these crimes in his interview in the Washington Post, where he states, quote, "Until recently, anything that smacked of mind control was extremely dangerous. Congress would simply take the money away. There were some abuses that took place, but I would argue that we threw the baby out with the bathwater. It's interesting that it's coming back." And while Alexander denied that he was part of an elaborate plot aimed at using mind control against the American people, he acknowledged support for learning how to tap into an enemy's brain. The dilemma of the war on terrorism, he noted, is that it never ends. So what do you do with enemies, such as those at Guantanamo? Keep them forever? That's impractical. Behavior modification would be an alternative, he says. Maybe I can fix you, or electronically neuter you, so that it's safe to release you into society, so you won't come back and kill me. It's only a matter of time before technology allows that scenario to come true. We're getting to where we can do that now. Where does that fall in the ethics spectrum? That's a really tough question." Unquote. If Colonel Alexander had openly admitted this program, he could have been prosecuted for divulging state secrets or assassinated as an example to others. His statements that mind control programs are in operation add up to a tacit admission that what he says that may happen in the future is actually happening today. 7. There is a population of credible witnesses who are proclaiming loudly that they are under attack and are being used as human experimental subjects against their will in terminal experiments, that is, experiments that end in the death of the human subject. The author has personally met with over 200 of these subjects and have found them to be credible. The degree of torture and human suffering that they are living under is unimaginable to those who have not been attacked in this manner. The authorities and congressional representatives have remained largely indifferent to their suffering, yet this current state of affairs may not last.
I am a victim of electronic harassment. I am being tortured with electromagnetic weapons.
I am a victim of electromagnetic microwave frequency harassment. I am being physically tortured every day.
Covert, silent radio frequency electronic attacks being carried out in public against people in their homes across the USA.
The electromagnetic harassment started at the end of 1996 and beginning of 1997.
It scared me because it felt like they were just like messing up my body, and it just felt like I was getting physically tortured, and I couldn't stop them.
I've been targeted with electromagnetic energy on at least 2 occasions where I measured the power at over 100% of the FCC allowed limit for RF exposure using a NARDA 8718 radiation hazard meter.
Just really embarrassing and humiliating, and I hate being in this position, but I have to stick it out. Hopefully I'll be free soon. But thank you for listening. Bye.
Case study number 2 is a man we will call Jesus. He is in his early 40s, married with 2 children, and living near San Antonio, Texas. Jesus was supporting his family while going to law school. He was nearing completion of his law degree and working for a very prestigious and powerful law firm in 2001. The firm was treating him in a very reprehensible manner, and rather than be a passive victim, he filed a discrimination lawsuit. Almost immediately he began to experience microwave attacks in his home against himself, his wife, and his 2 children. The nature of the attacks was very vicious, particularly against his eyes and other parts of his anatomy. He documented the attacks with a Gauss meter, a signal strength meter, and other electronic equipment. The children were also viciously attacked in the same manner, crying in their beds when the signal would peak. When Jesus would work on his case or talk to people on the phone, the microwave attacks on his children and himself would commence in earnest in an effort to thwart his activities of fighting back against the firm. His wife became pregnant, and the attacks were also pointedly directed at her and her unborn child. Jesus has extensive documentation of these attacks, pictures with very blatant physical injuries, such as horribly bloodshot eyes. He has documentation of the attacks recorded on his electronic equipment while they are occurring. He has photographs of his infant child with horribly bloodshot eyes due to microwave assault, as well as recordings of his children crying in their beds while they are under the torture of an assault from a non-lethal microwave weapon. This rather pointed torture of his family seems designed to send a very specific message that he should drop his lawsuit in order to spare his family. He moved outside of his home to other locations in town to spare his wife and children the worst of the non-lethal attacks. When Jesus moved out, the attacks on his family diminished in their intensity, but they have never ended. His own physical mutilation continues wherever he tries to find refuge. The family has even fled to multiple locations in Mexico to stay with extended family. This has resulted, according to Jesus, in previously healthy elderly relatives very rapidly becoming weaker and weaker until they experience increasing morbidity and death. Jesus has appealed to every law enforcement official and elected representative he possibly can. He has gone on TV on the Power Hour to get greater exposure and possibly relief. To date, as far as the author knows, he is still under attack, as is his entire family. His body has become so sensitive to the intense microwave attacks that he is no longer able to stay on the computer or telephone for very long. This case has fewer risk factors than case number 1, Elizabeth, and as such is atypical, but not entirely unusual. It falls under the category of whistleblower, which may comprise as many as 5 to 10% of all cases of targeted individuals. Whistleblowers are often government employees who suspect criminal wrongdoing and try to bring such cases of corporate and government criminality to light, and are subsequently enrolled in the Monarch program. This case has fewer risk factors than case number 1, Elizabeth, and as such is atypical, but not entirely unusual. It falls under the category of whistleblower, which may comprise as many as 5 to 10% of all cases of targeted individuals. Whistleblowers are often government employees who suspect criminal wrongdoing and try to bring such cases of corporate and government criminality to light, and are subsequently enrolled in the Monarch program.
Y luego van caminando la caperucita por una caperucita y llegan una canastita, color rosa y color azul. Y le dice la caperucita, y van corriendo y van brincando, y hay mucha agua y luego van a tirar ahí.
¿Sí te dijo?
No puedo.
¿Qué le dijo? ¿Te duele pancha? ¿Eh? ¿Le duele panchita? ¿Le duele cabecita? ¿Le duele pancha, mijo? ¿Mucho? ¿Le duele pancha, mijo? Ah, bueno, papá. Me muevo, se hace peor el dolor. Ni acostado, ni parado, ni sentado. Siento que me estalla el cuerpo por dentro. The pain, I feel my body exploding. It doesn't matter where I go, whether I'm standing up or laying down. It doesn't matter. I feel my body exploding. I'm very sick. Esto no es una muerte natural. Siento el corazón y la respiración en la cabeza. Tengo toda la cabeza inflamada. La espalda me explota. This is a crime. I feel my breathing. And my heart inside my head. I got my head all swollen. Every time I cough, sneeze, I feel like my head is exploding. This happened because I sent emails to Michigan explaining the corruption of the Thomas M. Cody Law School. That happened Monday. On Tuesday, the meter started showing 12 watts per square meter flashing. That is more than is required to cause physical harm. This is retaliation for denouncing racial discrimination. The defendant in this case now is the U.S. Attorney General, John Ashcroft. He will be the one for blaming for this murder. God bless us, and God bless America. If we let these people alone, they're causing a lot of harm to innocent people like me, just because I complain of racial discrimination. And because I complain about the former Chief Justice of the Michigan Supreme Court stealing money from us. His name is Thomas E. Brennan, and I hold him responsible for this. God bless him.
The city council, the investigators, the chief of police, the captain who was denying any child prostitution was going on in the canyon, even though I had it all on video. This doesn't lie. I have them on video refusing to act when these little girls, who I interviewed the migrants in the canyon, they are 13 years old, sometimes younger. Oh yeah, raping these little girls, these illegal alien sex slaves, they just turn another cheek. You know what I have them on video? Threatening to arrest me.
My name is Derek. I'm a targeted individual. I'm followed and harassed constantly.
I am a victim of electronic harassment.
I am a victim of electronic harassment.
I am a victim of electronic harassment. All right, my name is Catherine Moore. I am formerly of Wilmington, North Carolina. Today, I live in Miami, Florida with my daughter. I am a victim of electronic torture, surveillance, and wiretapping. I served as the mayor pro tem of that city for 14 years. During that time, I reported political corruption, police brutality, and the molestation of young children that went unpunished and unprosecuted. For these things, I became a targeted individual. There are so many of us who are targeted in this country today that we are organized and known as targeted individuals. I have been destroyed financially. I've lost my home. I lost my 30-year-old successful business. I was at one time a college professor. I cannot find a job anywhere. So I am completely and totally financially devastated. I am not alone. I am assaulted and tortured by law enforcement from the city level to the federal level. There are so many of us who are being tortured that our federal law enforcement agencies, who were charged with the duty and responsibility of protecting us from international terrorism, that protection is inadequate to the American citizenry because the money and the man-hours are being directed at domestic terrorism, at U.S. citizens. Anyone who dares to blow the whistle or who joins a peace march or has the audacity to tackle a major U.S. corporation becomes a targeted individual. There are those who do not want to accept this theory, but let me say again, America, wake up. We're living in a time where you no longer have the right to speak your mind and speak out. Did you know that just last year, the United States Supreme Court passed a law that said that whistleblowing was not, I repeat, was not protected under the First Amendment to the Constitution. So your rights are being severely limited. They will continue to be limited, and people must come forward, particularly if they're being targeted, and let someone know that they are part of our organization, which again is called Targeted Individuals. I would encourage everyone to visit a website called Stop Covert War and learn about the number of people who are targeted by our government. We want our numbers to grow, not because you're a target. We want you to join our organization so that we will have a voice. As our numbers grow, so will our power. Again, wake up, America. You could be next if you are in the wrong place at the wrong time. God bless.
My name is John Aaron Avalos. Today is the 21st of August, and I am a victim of electromagnetic microwave frequency harassment. I am being physically tortured every day. It's not so bad when I get out of the house, but the minute I get to bed, I am physically tortured. I sometimes get burn marks, wake up as if I've had a hangover for days. Takes me at least 2 hours to recover in the morning. Some days I can't walk, some days I can't see. Nauseous, I get vertigo. Those are just a few of the symptoms. Loss of energy, just loss of thought, several symptoms: heat, overheating, cold, extreme headaches. I am being abused every day and have been probably for the last 6 years now, every day. I do have physical stalkers still, and they've calmed down. I used to be stalked by several people a day, and I've been completely surrounded for about the last 6 years that I know of. I've been forced to move about 7 times, this being the 7th time that I have moved. They've surrounded me completely again, and definitely do try and get me to commit suicide and retaliate so that they could get the upper hand. I am affected at work. I do have people at work that are aggressive, always try and make me look like I've made huge mistakes. They gang up on me to make me look dumb. So it's a constant challenge trying to overcome these adverse situations and keep my job, because I have a group of people constantly around me trying to make it look like I've made mistake after mistake. So I am stalked at home, public, and at work. I've had several things vandalized. My car is vandalized on a regular basis. Things are stolen from my home. I have my clothing slashed and cut, so anything brand new that I buy is either stolen or cut. So I am constantly looking like I'm homeless or poor, because everything I own is either shredded or cut, because anything new I buy, they ruin it. I have things stolen. Again, I believe I've been poisoned on more than one occasion, but at this point, vertigo seems the way that they get me. If they want me to stop doing anything, they send me into some vertigo, and I immediately get sick. I've been sent to the hospital because of the torture that they've done to me, and anytime I try and get active, they increase the torture. I have reached out to several authorities to try and get them to stop this. I've reached out to Ted Kennedy, the Attorney General of Massachusetts, several newspapers. I mean, I write constantly to the media, newspapers, congressmen, representatives, senators, family, friends, everybody. As soon as somebody takes an interest in my story, they quickly become very afraid of me and cease contact with me. So it's very apparent that they're getting a hold of whoever I reach and get to help me. Then they soon are very afraid of me and want nothing to do with me. I do want my harassment to stop. I do believe that this is backed somehow by government contractors and the government. I do believe I am a human guinea pig, that they test different things on me on a nightly basis. I never authorized any experiments to be done on me. I don't now. I do not want them to commit any experiments on me. At this point, I do believe they will kill me if this is not stopped.
My name is Helen Anderson. I live in Alexandria, Virginia. I'm a victim of electronic harassment. I want to tell you how I was selected as a targeted individual. My uncle, Colonel Benjamin Leach, USAF, was stationed in San Antonio, Texas at the time the Nazi scientists were brought to the U.S. by President Harry F. Truman. My uncle objected to the Manhattan Project. Therefore, his family was selected for experimentation. I have been under surveillance most of my life, and I am now 69 years old. I am being tortured with electromagnetic weapons. I am being physically burned and shocked. I am tormented and abused every day. I am being physically tortured. They are trying to talk me into committing suicide. I suffer from defamation of character. They have driven me out of my place of employment. My children and grandchildren are abused by electronic surveillance and have been used for experimentation. I am agitpropped in public in an organized fashion. I have appealed to the authorities and no one will help me.
Hello, my name is John Mecca.
And I'm Deborah Lamb.
What you're about to hear is true. This is the most important information you will hear in your lifetime. It's about the most dangerous situation ever to occur in our nation, and in fact the world. Please, pay attention to this information. Your lives may depend upon your taking action. We are researchers investigating the U.S. government activities of covert, silent radio frequency electronic attacks being carried out in public against people in their homes across the USA.
For those of you who don't know about such things, we will attempt to bring you up to speed regarding this new atrocity.
7 years of research has uncovered scientific evidence that proves Americans are being experimented on today in what can be qualified as termination activities, as a worst-case definition, and at best as a life-threatening activity. It repeatedly shows electrical current in the citizens tested at just under levels that cause death from heart attack. The levels were compared to safety level tables appearing on websites of the Center for Disease Control, that's the CDC, and NIOSH, being OSHA's parent agency. Ladies and gentlemen, people are being murdered in their own homes, right under your very noses covertly.
What is at stake is the nation's future. If these activities of a government wilding on its people is not opposed, the very fabric of freedom of any sort is only a sham, and freedom is lost. These devices not only affect the health of an individual, but as you will learn also affect the mind. So then your love of country will be proven by taking action to stop these atrocities of robbing people, not only of health and life itself, but now because of advanced technology, they can and they do rob a person of the essence of their being human, their mind, indeed, even their soul, as some would say.
Those agencies of the U.S. government carrying out torture murder of its citizens are well insulated by multi-tiered layers of government bureaucratic protections by secret laws and secret policy originating from such legislation as Title 50, War and National Defense, Subpart 1520A, where, for example, law enforcement can use any Defense Department technology on the public in their jurisdiction just by sending a note to Congress. This statute has been further reinforced by then President Clinton signing legislation that allows for the Department of Defense to share high-tech military technology with the Department of Justice.
I learned that he's probably like from a satanic, the Church of Satan or Nazi or, you know, that type of person. So, I don't know. I've just been kind of out of it, and they're always like playing with my perceptions and saying like really negative, mean, dirty, just abusive things, and it's been very, very hard for the last 3 years, but I learned that it was happening to me before then. Like, I read my diaries, and I learned that it was probably happening since my childhood, and that really scared me because it felt like they were just like messing up my body, and it just felt like I was getting physically tortured, and I couldn't stop them. And it got a little bit better just finding out that it was the government, and every time I learned more, they harassed me less, because they harassed me with so much racism, guilt, and shame, and I would believe it when I didn't know that it was the government. Like, whoever was doing this to me, it just felt like very like I deserved what was happening, and I learned from the websites that other people are getting harassed just like me, and so I could kind of know the truth from what's not real a little bit more, and it's just really embarrassing and humiliating, and I hate being in this position, but I have to stick it out. Hopefully I'll be free soon. But thank you for listening. Bye.
I'm a victim of electronic harassment. I live in Washington, D.C. I'm being physically stung or stabbed or pounded, and it hurts. I am tormented and physically abused every day. My abusers are trying to force me to commit suicide. My abusers are trying to make me retaliate in order to discredit me. I am a victim of defamation of character. I have been driven out of my place of employment. I am being stalked and harassed in an organized fashion. I have appealed to the authorities and no one will help me.
It all started back in May of 2000, back in Phoenix, Arizona, and I was told by an officer this is being done by members of the Drug Enforcement Bureau, who's right here in Phoenix, Arizona, and I can definitely point to ones out who actually done this to me. These people can follow me in any building, in any house, in any hospital. They get my medical report. They got my social security number. They got every piece of information that you can think. I'm just trying to let the people know that this is happening here in America. This is happening in Phoenix, Arizona. Please be careful. Please be careful. These people will hurt you. Do not trust them, no matter what. They can listen to anything you know. No matter what you try to do, these people are out to hurt you and destroy you. The symptoms are having pain in my inside structure, and having my foot being burned. My needles are being stuck in my eye. They blocked my eye. They struck me down in the middle of the street, and a car ran over me. My pelvis bone is broken into 5 places. I have 3 7-inch long metal plates and 15 screws on my left side. I have a scar from my belly up to my chest. These people do not care about life. They're out to destroy life. They target you for any reason. I am a certified AC duct installer by trade for over 20 years. I've been trying to go to work for the last 2.5 years, and every time I get a job, they keep me from working.
Hello, my name is Jonathan Hansen, and I've been a targeted individual for more than 5 years now. I've been under surveillance using all manner of high technology devices, including through-the-wall radar. People have broken into my house repeatedly, once while I was inside. They have placed various substances in my coffee and soft drinks and performed all manner of hoaxes and tricks, in an attempt to freak me out and have me make outlandish reports to the police and have me diagnosed as mentally ill. I have experienced various types of gang stalking where the perpetrators, organized with cell phones, are always in visual contact with me at all times of the day and night. This is done conspicuously when I am alone and more subtly when others are with me, thus making it appear to them as if I am imagining it. Another persistent technique they have used is to cough, spit, or bring their hand to their face in my presence in an effort to sensitize me to these behaviors and have me diagnosed as mentally ill. Stating to a mental health worker that people you don't know are making gestures to you is a diagnostic criterion for schizophrenia. My first-class mail has disappeared on multiple occasions from the U.S. Post Office, including my tax forms and a request for an administrative hearing. I've been targeted with electromagnetic energy on at least 2 occasions where it could be definitively identified. Once in front of a Ralph's grocery store and once in my driveway, where I measured the power at over 100% of the FCC allowed limit for RF exposure using a NARDA 8718 radiation hazard meter. I have on multiple occasions been targeted with low frequency, less than 10 Hz, subsonic sound, which causes a feeling of illness and nausea. This is another of many non-lethal weapons that have been developed and are being used surreptitiously and illegally on unknowing targets. I have experienced all manner of malicious mischief and sabotage. My security video recorder has been disabled on multiple occasions by these devices. In non-consensual experiments, they have caused many types of apparent diseases. They cause the sensation of electric shocks, muscle contractions, visual and auditory hallucinations, and anxiety attacks with an increase in heart rate, among other effects. These are used in an attempt to control my behavior by shocking me, much like one would attempt to force a mouse through a maze by delivering electric shocks. On many occasions, the perpetrators have shocked me for no apparent reason, evidently just to show who is boss and that they can get away with it. I believe these technologies have been developed in secret by the military and are being used on unwitting subjects without their consent. Although the perpetrators use the American flag as a symbol, this is entirely a propaganda technique, as these activities are the antithesis of what the country and Constitution stand for. This is simply a continuation of a long history of non-consensual experimentation on citizens by various government agencies, such as the Project MKUltra, and is just one of a large number of secret projects being performed by the military. I have written many letters to authorities and received absolutely no response. This is probably because many mentally ill people make very similar claims, and the perpetrators know this and exploit it to avoid investigation. Also, I think it is difficult for most people to believe that the government would so blatantly violate people's civil rights, even though there's a long history of doing so. It's also clear on the basis of their participation in gang stalking activities that some law enforcement people and neighbors are cooperating, if not overtly colluding, in these perpetrations, making it impossible to enlist their assistance. Thanks for your time and attention.
My name is Juanita Purdy, and I live in Pensacola, Florida. I am a victim of electronic harassment. I am being physically stunned, stabbed, and burned. They are trying to make me retaliate in order to discredit me. I am a victim of defamation of character. I am being stalked and harassed in an organized manner. I have appealed to the authorities and no one will help me.
I was warned twice not to talk. I was told that I would be killed, and the Phoenix program, because George was involved with a very important part of that, not important really, but he and Al Gray and Louis Buell and Michael O'Boyle and Ollie Whipple, it's run by the mob. Then it was a mob military partnership, joint. It was a joint operation in Korea and in Vietnam. The highest levels of the Marine Corps and the Army in those special operations levels, the individuals are actually in the mob. New Jersey.
You're talking about the mafia type mob?
I'm talking about the Brooklyn, New Jersey mob. My husband, Al Gray, they're all Brooklyn, Cap Weinberger. Heinz Kissinger, there's the Boston mob, which was shipping weapons back and forth to Northern Ireland. And I don't want to get too deeply involved in that. You know, they go into this drug and secondary weapons sales. Vietnam was really important because a lot of experiments were done on boys who went over there. I had, since my husband disappeared and since they have been psychologically trying to destroy me, financially trying to destroy me, because I'm telling the truth. But I was being handled psychologically. On the 4th of March, my home was broken into. They had elaborate plans to handle me. And each time I was totally traumatized. They took my tape. They started coming in and putting sticky stuff and running my, just mind-jagging me.
Putting sticky stuff
on the tapes, and they would put the tapes on different, they would go to a lot of trouble. They would take things that I said on one tape and put it on another, and I mean, they were having fun with me psychologically. So my husband is a friend of Scrowcroft, McFarland's a Marine. All of these men are personal friends of George's. Colby, I spoke with personally on the phone. 2 weeks later, he was murdered. He went to Princeton. My husband knew him. He knew my husband. He told me, Colby told me that...
Now this is General Colby?
No, this is William Colby, who was head of the CIA.
Oh, okay, yes.
Who was murdered in a...
so-called boating accident.
I know exactly how that happened because, you see, the SEAL teams 6, 4, 6, and 8 on the East Coast, and then the odd numbers on the West Coast. The Israelis train with the SEALs. They do a lot of wet ops, murders, over here because of some sort of arrangement. The young boys, I met 3 young assassins on a bus, going up back and forth to Sarah as I went on the bus because they were sabotaging my car so often. And they do wet ops. They'll just, murder 5, 10, 20 people. And then they blame it on the Arabs, or they blame it on somebody else, but it's actually NATO rogue assassins. And it's a very small cult. I mean, I have heard the things that they do when they're colonels. It's some of the same things that they do in Cap and Gown, which is the Princeton version of Skull and Bones. My husband went to Princeton after he went to the Hun school for 4 years. He had gone through 4 years of this mind control. And the man who did it, you can see this on the video, his name was Charles Caddick, and another man named Alexander Robinson. But he was a little boy when he was, it's mind control. M.K. Ultra, somebody said. They had a group of men, psychiatrists, when I was living with Sarah McClendon, the senior White House correspondent, who saved my life. But she said, Mrs. Griggs, you get up here to Washington right now or you're dead. You're going to be dead. And I still feel as though I probably will be. I'll certainly be financially ruined. They are still doing psychological operations in my home, sabotaging my car, messing with my telephone, my radio. You cannot believe what I've been through in the last 2 years. It is horrible. And it's being done to other women and other wives and other men who don't go along with the program. They are murdering Marines. They're murdering sailors.
Of course, one of the best ways for you to stay alive is to do what you're doing.
Really?
Reduce this, absolutely. Reduce this to video, get this scattered all over the country. They won't touch you because if you're dead, that validates everything you're saying, see. So
well, they poison people.
Publicity is the best thing you can do.
My name is Derek. I'm a targeted individual. I'm followed and harassed constantly. I'm surveilled in my private affairs. All of my personal affairs, friendships, associations, etc. are interfered with. I'm also remotely harassed in my home environment. I have contacted authorities to look into the matter on various times, the police, the FBI, congressional officials, and no one to date has been able to help. I'm working with other individuals who are also in similar situations. We are all looking for solutions for this type of harassment. The officials that are in positions of authority have to date been not able to help with the situation. Our organization is seeking answers. We're seeking other victims and seeking solutions for covert harassment. This is covert intelligence activity. It's conducted by often by government intelligence agencies, sometimes by corporate entities and private individuals. It is covert activity, and it's not easily reportable to authorities who may have the person institutionalized if they go to the station. Or some people have called and reported this activity and have been forcibly institutionalized. But it is something that is very real, and it's happening to more and more people. For anyone seeking information or for assistance with a similar situation such as these, our organization is called Freedom from Covert Harassment and Surveillance, and our website is www.freedomfchs.com. You can also call our voicemail number. It's 866-310-3117. We're hoping that this message reaches you who are mostly unaware of what's happening, that you will know that you are not alone.
Leslie Crawford. I'm a targeted individual here in the state of Detroit, Michigan, and I created public awareness flyers regarding illegal spying. My website is lesliecrawford.cabanova.com. We have conference meetings regarding the issues, and some of the information and damages as a result of being a directed energy victim is eye damage, neurological damage, microwave burns to the skin. When I speak of microwave burns to the skin, not only is your skin burnt, but your skin has also pinholes in it. I'm a victim of directed energy weapons, neurological, and gang stalking. For example, on my arm, all over my body, these are the type of burns. Going up the right arm that victims have on their body as a result of electrical burns. This is a fresh one that just came. Today is August the 15th, 2007. It's more burns going up my arm This is another fresh one. I have them in the back. My back is totally burned to the front of the body. This is another burn, which is a pinhole. Look at the instrument as it goes into the skin. It's like a pinhole burn. It goes right inside that dot. On my leg, this is my right leg, my right hip. This is another burn with a pinhole burn. The instrument is right here. Look how it goes right into the skin, right into the pinhole from being tortured with these energy weapons. On my left arm, it looks almost like I'm a dolphin. I have webs and marks all over my body from being tortured 24/7 with these energy weapons. I became a victim in 2001 of gang stalking in the workplace by my employers for no reason whatsoever, which led to violations of my privacy in the home along with my 2 young daughters. This is another pinhole burnt mark in the arm. As you can see, the instrument will go directly in there. See how the instrument can go through the pinholes? This is what it means when target individuals say it leaves pinholes in your body. You can just put it's a complete hole where the device, the electromagnetic weapons have been entered into your body. And thank you again.
Try and protect themselves from some unusual hate crimes. As News 10's George Warren shows us, that's put them at odds with their neighbors and city building inspectors.
Basically, we've tracked since 9/11 hate crimes of a and overt nature.
The covert crimes, the family says, include intense microwave radiation aimed at the house. That explains the metal panels.
I would say that since we've put that, we've noticed the temperature difference in our house go down, noticed our health improve.
The D'Souza family includes 2 college-educated young women who say scientific instruments prove they are under attack.
The trajectories we've tracked, it's been coming from the neighbors. First, you're skeptical, but we've tracked our health, the temperature in the home. We've had blanks that are supposed to reflect microradiation and radar. They're radar reflective material, and they've burned. As a shield to protect against radiation, because microwave radiation is reflected off of aluminum, so it's a protective measure.
Today, the D'Souza family tried to explain to us why they did it with binders of data and electronic measuring devices, which they prove their neighbors are bombarding them with microwaves and other kinds of radiation.
If people can imagine one night that they couldn't sleep well and they woke up totally just exhausted, that's what we were experiencing every day.
The father says since 9/11, his family has become a target because he is originally from Pakistan.
And to be treated like this, like I'm a non-citizen, it hurts.
What's happening is when they're burning through it.
The family says it will comply, but will continue living under thermal blankets inside the house.
The best we could do is to protect ourselves.
The neighbors, meantime, will continue to try to convince the D'Souzas that no one here means them any harm.
It's been coming from the neighbors.
Treated like this, like I'm a non-citizen, it hurts.
We've tracked since 9/11 hate crimes of a covert and overt nature.
They say they still believe they are under attack, but say they're now looking into replacing the metal sheets with ordinary aluminum siding.
Case study number 24 is a family of 4 living in Sacramento, California. Terry is 45, married with 2 daughters in their 20s. He was born in Pakistan and moved to the U.S. at the age of 4. He has a master's degree in engineering. One daughter is an aeronautical engineer and the other is a sociologist entering law school. Terry became a target just after 9/11. The entire family of 4 are overt targets of gang stalking and microwave attacks. Normally only one person is targeted overtly within a family group. Terry's family is very religious, Baha'i faith, and very close-knit. They are lucky compared to other targets who are purposefully isolated from family and friends. This family of targets has drawn together closer since they are aware of a collective torment. Terry had several common risk factors: above average intelligence, foreign birth, interracial marriage, religious minority. But this case was strange because these were not the usual high number of risk factors, and the overt targeting of an entire family was outside the norm. I visited the family and observed them for several days. They are loyal Americans who prize education and freedom above all things, yet they were in obvious distress. Terry has owned his home for 28 years. The neighbors were newcomers who ran the gamut from strange to menacing. I identified about 8 different neighbors who I considered to be behaving in the standard manner of perpetrators. Many would come and go at the same time as Terry's family members, as if they did not have regular working hours. This shadowing activity is common among TIs, and is designed to let the target know that they are being observed and their comings and goings are known. According to Terry, some of the neighbors' houses where they live were not the neighbors' only homes, and may not have been their primary residence. Several neighbors would stand outside their yards and glower at us as we sat on the porch. This in and of itself was not terribly unusual, but he was right. Something was in the air. The family reported microwave attacks that featured shocks, stings, stabs, burns, and the wasting effect of generalized fatigue and emotional distress of standard non-lethal microwave attacks. The entire family was experiencing fatigue and moderate to serious health effects due to frequencies that interrupt sleep, induce fatigue, and cause a general physical wasting. Like most TIs, they sought relief from their torture with shielding, which often included everything from thermal blankets to Faraday cages to lead bricks, in an effort to deflect the physical heating and bodily deterioration from being cooked. Terry has an engineering degree, so his house was a collection of what I find in the homes of most TIs: electronic detection equipment, thermal blankets, oscillating fans, humidifiers, and even at one point the family resorted to corrugated sheeting, placed at discrete angles stacked all around the outside of their house. The image of 12-foot by 3-foot wide corrugated sheeting entirely surrounding the outside of a house in suburban Sacramento did not go unnoticed. Terry showed the authorities the readings of elevated levels of microwave energy in and around his house, the burns on thermal blankets, the burns on vegetation outside the house, documented health effects on the family members, including lupus, and the constant harassment and stalking behavior of his neighbors, meticulously documented, all to no effect. Terry bravely made the evening news for 2 weeks, at which time he was forced to take his shielding down. Terry reported to me previously that he was walking on the side of his house and felt a blast of warm air. A large hose was coming out of his neighbor's attic and into his yard in a concealed manner. The neighbors who moved in all around him shortly after his targeting with microwave weapons began had planted fast-growing trees and hedges that formed an enormous U-shaped barrier 30 to 60 feet high on 3 sides of his home. It was a barrier that contained the air around his house very tightly. The prevailing wind generally pushed the airflow toward the front of his home and into the open area of the barrier, thus containing the air in a tight pocket around his home. When Terry discovered the concealed hose, he mounted very large industrial fans in his backyard and pushed the captive air out of the artificially created air pocket. A school that is less than 100 meters from his back door was immediately evacuated in what was described publicly as a gas leak emergency. I personally witnessed his immediate neighbors often react to a distinctive horn. When it sounded, they entered their houses and shut all the doors and windows for approximately an hour. When the distinctive horn sounded again, the neighbors emerged from their homes as if they had been given an all clear. Subsequently, the suspicious neighbors can be observed washing down their cars, the sides of their houses, and even the sidewalks with a high-pressure hose, leaving a distinctive residue on the ground. At night, the neighbors can be observed using a black light or ultraviolet light inside their homes. Ultraviolet light is a primary means of destroying virus particles. Virus in the lab that is exposed to ultraviolet light will literally fall apart in very short order. The reason that Terry and his family are targeted together is that they are in a distinctive category of the experimental weapons development program. Terry and his family are being used in an experimental fashion to test the use of small amounts of biological and chemical agents in tandem with microwave frequencies. The experimental virus or chemical particles are released from the house next door into the air pocket around his home, formed by the enormous hedges and trees that surround his house in a U-shape. The horn is sounded, and the neighbors quickly enter their homes and shut the doors and windows to prevent exposure. Terry, his wife, and their 2 daughters are bathed in microwave frequencies that resonate or spin the viral and chemical agents to increase their activity within the human body. The blood-brain barrier porosity is altered by the microwave attack, and particle sizes that would normally be blocked are allowed to cross the blood-brain barrier directly into the brain. The microwave weapon is tuned specifically to the resonance frequency of the viral or chemical particles and bathes all 4 of their bodies, and thus increases the reactivity of the introduced agent millions of times above normal. This functions the same as giving the experimental group a massive dose of the experimental agent. The exposure is made and then allowed to dissipate, at which time the all-clear is sounded and the neighbors emerge from their homes and wash down the sides of their houses, their cars, and their sidewalks. Normally, biological warfare agents will deteriorate almost entirely in a matter of hours under conditions of direct sunlight and heat. Terry and his family are being used as human experimental subjects to perfect the latest technique for using chemical and biological agents in conjunction with microwave weapons. Terry is plagued with health problems that have left him unable to work. When he visits the doctor, tests of many kinds are run, and the results and those of his family are given to the government perpetrators of these crimes in order to measure the effect of the viral and chemical agents. Terry and his entire family are in a terminal experiment that will end in death. He and his family have been sacrificed to perfect the latest use of non-lethal weapons in conjunction with biological and chemical warfare. The Department of Defense hides these programs in the Department of Justice under the title of crowd control in order to avoid detection, which would put them in violation of international treaties, not to mention war crimes. I have told Terry that he should move, but he was adamant that he and his family would stay no matter what. I informed him of my worst fears, to which he replied that the experiment would only recommence at a different location. From my experience with the target population, I could not dispute this assertion.